Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our future.
Today we're tackling a really significant book, The Everything War. It's by Dana Mattioli, who spent years covering Amazon for the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, she had a front row seat. And this book, it's a narrative, right? But it digs into how Amazon became this behemoth.
Exactly, from online bookseller to this sprawling empire across, well, everything. Retail, logistics, cloud, smart homes.
So our goal today is to really unpack the structural stuff Mattioli highlights. We're looking at the core ideas, the specific examples, some are pretty shocking actually, that show how Amazon built this dominance.
It's more than just a store now, right? The book makes a strong case that it operates like a modern utility.
With real power over partners, competitors, and ultimately you, the listener.
Yeah, and it's a story not just about smarts, but strategic ruthlessness, exploiting a regulatory environment that kind of looked the other way for a long time.
Okay, let's jump into that.
So to get Amazon, Mattioli says you first need to get the legal groundwork, antitrust law.
Right, and this big shift she calls the Borkian shift. What was that about?
Okay, so back in the late 70s, you had this legal scholar, Robert Bork. He basically turned antitrust law on its head. His core argument was super influential, he said. The only goal that should guide the interpretation of the antitrust laws is the welfare of consumers.
Just consumer welfare.
Nothing.
Nothing else.
Pretty much. Before Bork, courts looked at market structure, making sure there were enough competitors that no one got too big. But after Bork, it boiled down to price and efficiency. If consumers got low prices, the courts basically said, okay, big isn't necessarily bad.
Wow. So that sounds like a green light for a company like Amazon, right?
As long as they kept prices low.
It was like a regulatory invisibility cloak for decades to say it's good for the customer and you could get away with a lot, which is why the book brings in Lina Khan's view early on.
She's the current FTC chair, right? Her early work really challenged this Bork standard.
Exactly. Khan argued Amazon had uncanny likenesses to Standard Oil, the classic monopoly. Standard Oil, like predatory pricing.
Yeah, that and also how Amazon's own rivals often had to use Amazon services, like fulfillment or cloud computing with AWS. They were customers and competitors. A tricky spot.
Okay, so the legal environment was permissive. What about the financial side? Mattioli talks about this valuation paradox.
Oh, this is wild. Think about Amazon around 2014. Market value, $140 billion. Massive.
Okay.
But that same year, they lost $241 million.
Lost money. With that valuation, how does that even work?
That's the paradox. Mattioli says investors showed this wholesale disregard for normal stuff, like profit margins, PE ratios.
Why? Were they just betting on the future?
It seems like it. The market treated Amazon's losses not as failures, but as, deliberate investments, fueling the growth engine to achieve that future dominance, that monopoly power. Wall Street basically subsidized their price wars.
Believing they'd eventually control everything and then raise prices.
Which, as the book lays out, is pretty much what happened. It was a long game.
And this ties into Mattioli's core point about Amazon becoming something bigger.
Right. Her observation is key here. Amazon's dominance, the true nature and scale of it, was singular. In simple terms, the company had positioned itself to be a modern-day utility of sorts, one that no one could ignore.
A utility. That's a powerful idea. And Bezos himself, coming from Wall Street, knew how to play this game from the start.
Oh, yeah. The book stresses he was always looking for arbitrage strategies, ways to exploit differences in systems.
Like the tax thing.
Exactly. That was the first big one. Setting up in Washington State, small population, meant for years they didn't have to collect sales tax in most other states.
Seems small, but in book selling.
Huge. Margins were thin, shaving off 7, 8, 9%. That gave them a massive immediate edge over Borders, Sears, all the physical stores collecting tax.
So they benefited from the very systems they were about to disrupt.
Precisely. And Lina Khan nailed this strategy early on, saying it is as if Bezos charted the company's growth by first drawing a map of antitrust laws and then devising routes to smoothly bypass them. It was calculated.
And the cost was local retail, the personal touch.
That was the first casualty. Mattioli includes this poignant quote from a boutique owner, Makazlin Kadu, talking about her customers. I knew their closets better than they did. That kind of relationship, that trust, it got bulldozed by this efficiency-first utility model.
Okay, so the stage is set. Chapter 2, growth over profits, gets into the early Amazon culture, right? How Bezos built the machine.
Yeah, it dives into that early, gritty startup phase. The office was apparently really dumpy, cramped, near a heroin needle exchange, the book says.
Sounds rough. Lots of long hours.
Oh, 70-hour weeks were standard. But it wasn't just about hard work. Bezos actively pushed for something more aggressive.
The killer instinct.
That's the quote. He apparently told his early staff, almost like a reprimand. The problem with you guys is you don't have killer instinct.
Wow. So not just building a bookstore, but building an empire from day one.
Totally. That's why he registered Relentless.com, which, by the way, still redirects to Amazon. It tells you everything about the mindset.
And this translated into how they manage money, too, the frugality thing.
Yeah, but it was selective frugality. Really telling. The book mentions engineers literally sleeping under desks during crunch time.
Okay, dedication.
Right. But then they asked the company to cover a midnight pizza order to keep going, and Bezos flat out refused.
Refused pizza for exhausted engineers. That seems petty.
It seems harsh, maybe a lack of empathy, but Mattioli frames it as strategic. Frugality wasn't about saving pennies everywhere. It was about only spending on things that directly benefited the customer or fueled growth. Internal comforts, not a priority. Every dollar saved went back into expansion, lower prices, faster shipping.
Growth above all else, even employee morale, apparently.
It seems that way, and this relentless focus on expansion was really put to the test during the IPO roadshow in '97.
Right, because they were losing money. Investors must have been skeptical.
They were. Amazon lost nearly $6 million the year before. But Bezos, he didn't budge on the strategy.
He pushed ahead anyway.
Totally intentional. He insisted on pricing the IPO at $18 a share, aiming to maximize the cash they raised, profits be damned. A former colleague is quoted saying, he was very belligerent about the fact that the company should not and would not be turning a profit for a very long time.
Belligerent about not making a profit. That's unconventional.
It was their secret weapon. They essentially got permission from Wall Street to lose money for years.
Yeah.
Think about it. What traditional retailer could possibly compete with that? None of them had shareholders willing to tolerate intentional losses on that scale.
So that financial leeway, that was the real advantage early on.
Absolutely. It let them expand like crazy. Music, VHS tapes, software, going international, just relentlessly adding categories.
The everything store idea was baked in early.
Oh, yeah. There's this famous quip from the CFO back then, Joy Covey. Someone asked if there was anything Amazon wouldn't sell.
And she said,
Cement. It costs too much to ship.
ha! So literally everything else was fair game.
Pretty much. They saw every retail category as conquerable territory. Another early employee, Capelli, is quoted saying, "We were really competing against physical retail. We spoke back then about how we were going to conquer Walmart."
Conquer Walmart. That's ambitious for an online bookseller back then.
Hugely ambitious.
Yeah.
But they had that financial backing, that tolerance for losses that competitors like, say, Linens and Things just didn't have. Their shareholders demanded profits. Amazon celebrated losses. That difference was critical.
It funded the disruption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by 1999, they weren't hiding it. A Time magazine profile quoted Bezos directly. "You name it, Amazon will sell it. Anything," says Bezos, with a capital A. The mission was clear.
Okay, so post-IPO, the money starts flowing in and the company changes. Chapter 3 talks about this, right? The invasion of the MBAs.
Yeah, the culture shift was dramatic. They went from around 600 employees to over 7,600 in just 2 years.
Wow.
And the new hires were different. Not the early scrappy types. These were, Ivy League grads and MBAs. The book describes them wearing khaki pants, crisply pressed, with a blue Oxford shirt. A uniform, almost.
How did the original employees react?
It was tough for them. One quote captures it perfectly. "It was like the invasion of the MBAs after the IPO. It was disorienting and depressing and stressful. Suddenly there was all this corporate jargon, eyeballs, share of wallet. The vibe changed."
And this led to more formal structures, like the S team.
Exactly. Bezos formed the S team, his core leadership group, around 2001. People like Andy Jassy, Jeff Wilk, names that became huge later. This team really embedded a new, much tougher internal culture.
Good for how?
They brought in stack ranking, the system GE and Intel used, where you have to rank your employees and cut the bottom 5 or 10% every single year.
Ouch. That sounds brutal. Creates intense internal competition.
Incredibly intense. The book quotes someone describing the environment as utterly devoid of any empathy. Performance improvement plans, or PIPs, became this constant threat, often seen less as a way to help people improve and more as, a way to manage them out.
So ruthless internally. Did that reflect how they saw the outside market too? Mattioli calls it the feudal overlord strategy.
Yeah, that framing is stark. The S team apparently had this chilling way of defining their market potential.
How so?
They didn't just talk about market share. The quote is, inside the company, the S team talked about Amazon's total addressable market as everybody else's operating margin.
Wait, other companies' profits were their target market.
That's the mindset. If someone else was making money, Amazon saw that profit margin as something they could potentially capture. It's imperialistic almost.
And we saw this play out with early partnerships, like Toys R Us and Borders.
Those deals in the early 2000s were classic examples. Amazon basically ran their online stores for them, fulfilled the orders, handled the tech.
Things help.
For Amazon, it was brilliant. They got paid, sure, but more importantly, they learned the logistics inside out. They got all the customer data, email lists, everything.
All the partners.
Suffered. Borders is the tragic example. The deal hobbled their own e-commerce efforts, and they actually went bankrupt. 11,000 jobs last.
So Amazon was profiting directly from its competitors' operations.
Literally,
Yeah.
as one former exec put it, Amazon was literally growing on the backs of their competitors and funding themselves through their competitors. It was a structural power play.
Okay, but this chapter also details the birth of something huge. AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Right. AWS was almost an accidental empire, born from Amazon's own struggles. Their internal tech infrastructure was apparently getting clunky, slowing down projects.
So they fixed it for themselves.
Yeah, and then Andy Jassy, who was advising Bezos, had this light bulb moment. If we need this kind of scalable, reliable computing infrastructure, other companies probably do too.
Let's sell it to them.
Exactly. Offer computing power, storage, databases, all on demand. Pay as you go. The book describes it as akin to the internet version of using a utility, like gas or electricity.
Like renting computing power instead of building your own data center.
Precisely. Companies could just outsource the whole headache to Amazon for a fee.
And the impact of AWS was massive.
Understatement of the century. It basically became the foundation for huge chunks of the modern internet. Startups could launch without massive upfront investment, but crucially for Amazon,
The profits.
huge profits. By 2021, AWS was generating something like 3/4 of Amazon's total operating profit. This wasn't just a side business. It became the cash engine funding the entire empire.
So the profits from AWS allowed them to keep subsidizing low prices and losses in the retail business.
Absolutely. It gave them an almost unassailable advantage. No traditional retailer had access to that kind of internal cash flow. AWS was the ultimate fuel for the everything war.
So AWS is pouring cash in. How did that translate into retail dominance? Mattioli talks about the flywheel, right?
Yeah, the flywheel concept is central to understanding how all these pieces fit together. It's this self-reinforcing loop.
How does it work?
Okay, it starts with attracting more third-party sellers to the marketplace. That increases selection. More selection attracts more customers.
Makes sense.
More customers, in turn, attract even more sellers. This increases competition among sellers, which drives prices down.
Lower prices.
Attract more shoppers, and the whole cycle repeats. The key idea is that feeding any part of this loop, like injecting AWS profits to lower prices or offer faster shipping, makes the entire flywheel spins faster and faster. It creates momentum.
Okay, so the flywheel is spinning, then Amazon starts competing with its own sellers. With Amazon Basics.
Exactly. Amazon Basics launched in 2009. They started using the data from their marketplace, seeing what sold well, to create their own versions of popular products.
Was there a specific strategy behind which products they chose?
Oh yeah. The book states the internal rule was pretty mercenary. An Amazon private label product had to generate a higher profit margin for Amazon than the fee they would collect from a third-party seller selling the same kind of item.
So they'd only compete if they could make more money doing it themselves.
Pretty much. It was about maximizing Amazon's take, and the impact could be immediate and brutal.
Like the HDMI cable example.
That's the classic one Mattioli uses. One of the very first products was the HDMI cable, which was exceptionally disruptive at that time. You had brands selling them for $30, $50, even over $100.
Right, they used to be expensive.
Then Amazon Basics comes in selling them for like $6 to $8. It just annihilated the market, as the book puts it. They used their scale and data to completely undercut everyone else.
But didn't they have rules about using seller data unfairly?
Supposedly, yes.
Yeah.
There were internal policies against using individual seller data to launch competing products. But the power dynamic was already totally skewed.
How so?
The sellers were trapped. The book notes they were in a catch-22. They felt squeezed by Amazon's fees, locked into using Amazon's expensive services like advertising and fulfillment.
But they couldn't leave.
Exactly. They felt they had no choice but to sell on the platform, because that's where all the customers were, thanks to the flywheel. Leaving meant disappearing.
So even without explicitly breaking data rules initially, the structure itself was coercive.
Deeply coercive. And sometimes the tactics went beyond just competition into what looks a lot like predatory behavior. The Quidsy acquisition, the company behind Diapers.com, is the prime example here.
Why did Amazon target them?
Because, as internal documents apparently showed, moms are one of the most important customer segments. Quidsy was doing well, building loyalty with parents. Amazon saw them as a threat and decided to eliminate them.
How? Just by competing hard.
It went way beyond normal competition. Amazon launched an all-out price war, doubling discounts on diapers to 30%. They were intentionally losing huge amounts of money.
Did they worry about antitrust? Predatory pricing is illegal, right?
They did worry. The book reveals the team brought in its legal department to discuss the discount to make sure it wouldn't be considered predatory pricing and introduce an antitrust risk.
And the lawyers said okay.
Apparently, the conclusion was that since Amazon didn't yet have enough market share in diapers, specifically to be deemed a monopolist at that moment, they were technically in the clear under the prevailing Borkian standard. It was legal maneuvering.
But the cost must have been immense.
Staggering. Internal docs showed Amazon losing $12 on every single box of diapers sold during this price war. It cost them $200 million in 1 month.
Just to crush Quidsy.
Just to make Quidsy bleed. And then came the final move. Quidsy actually got a lifeline, a $650 million acquisition offer from Walmart.
So they could escape.
Not quite. According to the book, Amazon executives then delivered a threat. If Quidsy took the Walmart deal, Amazon would cut its diaper prices to zero. Just completely destroy the market and Quidsy's value overnight.
Zero. That's undeniably predatory.
It seems that way. Quidsy felt they had no choice. They felt forced to sell to Amazon for $545 million, over $100 million less than the Walmart offer.
Wow. So Amazon basically bought them by threatening to destroy them, using their ability to sustain massive losses as the weapon.
Exactly. It proved their goal wasn't profit in the short term. It was market structure, market control. Eliminating competition using financial firepower competitors couldn't match.
Okay, so they dominate retail, squeeze sellers,
Right.
but the ambition didn't stop there.
Yeah.
Devices, right. Kindle, Echo, Fire TV.
Right. And Amazon's hardware strategy was fundamentally different from, say, Apple's. Apple makes money selling you the expensive iPhone.
But Amazon...
For Amazon, the devices themselves weren't necessarily the profit centers. A former hardware creator quote in the book puts it bluntly, these were all Trojan horses to get to your pocketbook.
Trojan horses mean...
Meaning the goal wasn't really device profit. It was to get cheap, Amazon-controlled portals into your home, your living room, your kitchen. Portals through which they could sell you more stuff from the main Amazon store, push Prime subscriptions, gather data.
So they'd often sell the hardware at cost or even a loss.
Often, yeah. Undercutting competitors on device price to gain that foothold in the home. Opening up direct pipelines for commerce and data collection.
And this push into hardware led to some pretty serious accusations, didn't it? Like corporate espionage.
Yes, the book details several instances where Amazon's interactions with smaller companies or potential partners looked suspicious. The story of Ubi is a standout example.
Ubi? How was that?
It was an early voice-activated smart speaker, kind of like a Star Trek computer, developed by Leor Gribler's company. This was before the Echo.
Okay, so they were pioneers.
They were. And they met with Amazon 5 times under a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, sharing their tech and roadmap.
Under NDA, so it should have been protected.
You'd think. But Amazon terminated the NDA right before the last meeting. And shortly after that, Amazon launched the Echo.
Oh, wow.
Grebler claimed he'd given Amazon a trove of proprietary information, stuff that was almost a roadmap for the product. Amazon denies copying, of course, but the timing is suggestive. Ubi folded soon after Echo launched.
So using meetings to gather intelligence for their own products.
That's the allegation. And the book suggests this wasn't isolated. It argues that Amazon's corporate development arm, and even the Alexa Fund, meant to support startups, sometimes operated less like typical deal-making and more like a corporate espionage unit.
Strong words. Are there other examples?
The Bonobos case is another one Mattioli highlights. Bonobos is a clothing retailer known for its well-fitting khakis.
Right.
Amazon met with them, supposedly discussing potential partnerships or investment. They got detailed info on Bonobos' signature product, their supply chain, their customer profile.
And then?
Months later, Amazon launched its own Amazon Essentials Slim Fit khakis, selling for under $25, directly competing with Bonobos' $100 pants.
Ouch. Did bonobos feel used?
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of their execs, Dunn, is quoted saying, they had people in the room who would have been in a really good position to learn everything they could from us and then apply that to their own private label brands. It felt like intelligence gathering disguised as deal-making.
This pattern of using platform power seems consistent. What about the Vivint example, the smart home company?
Yeah, this one shows how they leverage the platform itself. Vivint makes smart home security devices that could integrate with Alexa and Echo.
Okay, standard integration.
But Amazon apparently demanded more. They didn't just want data from when a customer used the Vivint skill on Echo, they demanded access to the current state, meaning continuous, around-the-clock data from every single Vivint device in a customer's home, just for Vivint to remain functional on the Echo platform.
Whoa, constant data streaming from all devices, just to be allowed on the platform.
It was the demand. According to the book, Vivint refused, calling it going too far. But it shows the kind of leverage Amazon felt it had over companies needing access to its ecosystem.
Okay, so espionage, coercive data demands. What about the core issue of using third-party seller data for private label? Did Mattioli find concrete proof, despite the internal rules?
This is where the Fordham case comes in, and it seems pretty damning. Fordham sold a very popular car trunk organizer on Amazon, a bestseller.
Right.
Amazon's private label team explicitly pulled a detailed internal report on Fordham's product. The report apparently had 25 columns of data units sold, advertising costs, return rates, crucially, Amazon's exact profit margin on Fordham sales.
Basically a complete business analysis of their competitor using Amazon's internal data.
Exactly. A roadmap for how to copy the bestseller and undercut it. And this wasn't a rogue action, according to Mattioli sources.
It was standard practice.
An employee apparently confirmed that pulling this kind of individual competitor data was standard operating procedure. They even joked, darkly, that if regulators checked emails, it wouldn't be difficult for them to find the truth. It's not even a secret.
So the internal ethical rules were window dressing.
It strongly suggests that, in practice, the pressure to grow private label often trumped those policies. This creates that inescapable cycle for sellers. Pay high fees to Amazon, risk having your successful product copied by Amazon using your own data. It's why one seller, Tossig, described selling on Amazon as feeling almost like a charity case. They felt trapped in a system designed to extract value from them.
So with all this aggressive expansion and controversial tactics, Amazon eventually started getting negative attention, right? Chapter 8, Crafting the Message, covers how they started managing their image.
Yeah, the scrutiny really ramped up. You had the Hachette dispute over book pricing, which got ugly. And then critically, these really damaging reports about warehouse conditions.
The heat wave story.
That was a big one. The 2011 report Mattioli mentions about ambulances being stationed outside warehouses in Pennsylvania during heat waves temps over 110 Fahrenheit because it was apparently cheaper to treat workers for heat stroke than to install air conditioning. That kind of story is PR poison.
Yeah, that's terrible press. So Bezos decided they needed to take PR seriously.
Absolutely. The old "we don't talk about ourselves" approach wasn't working anymore. The big move came in 2015. They hired Jay Carney.
Former White House press secretary for Obama, that's a major hire.
Huge signal. He reported directly to Bezos, heading up global corporate affairs. It marked the end of Amazon trying to fly under the radar.
And they backed it up with money. Lobbying.
Big time. Their lobbying spending exploded, from around $2 million in 2010 to over $16 million by 2019.
What was Carney's strategy? How did they try to spin the narrative?
The focus shifted to positive messaging. Jobs created by new warehouses, how Amazon helps small businesses sell online, community investments. Trying to frame Amazon as essential, a positive force.
Standard corporate responsibility stuff.
On the surface, yes. But the book reveals a much harder edge behind the scenes. There's this internal note from Drew Herdner, another top PR executive, that sums up the real goal. We want policymakers and press to fear us.
Fear us. Not respect us or partner with us, but fear us.
That's what the note said. It suggests the PR push wasn't just about polishing the image. It was about projecting power, intimidating potential critics or regulators.
Wow. Okay, so they're crafting this tough external message. But what about internally? Did that hyper-competitive culture, the stack ranking, have consequences?
Devastating consequences, according to the book. The pressure, especially on white-collar workers, led to serious mental health issues.
Like the suicide attempt mentioned in the book.
Yes, the story from 2016 is incredibly harrowing. a software engineer who felt he was facing retaliation after raising issues and was put on one of those dreaded PIPs.
Performance improvement plan.
Right. He emailed senior executives, including Bezos himself, and then attempted suicide by jumping from a building at Amazon's Seattle campus. His email reportedly ended with the line, "Now, if you have time, look out of the window, watch me fall."
That's horrifying. What was the company's response?
It's chilling. The engineer thankfully survived the fall. But according to the book, Bezos remained silent on the matter, and the company's IT department was instructed to delete the engineer's email from employee inboxes, classifying it internally as containing aggressive and inflammatory language.
Delete the evidence. Focus on the language, not the desperation it conveyed.
That appears to be the focused damage control over addressing the root cause, the culture Mattioli describes as utterly devoid of any empathy. It highlights a huge disconnect.
Yeah, it suggests that even as they were getting sophisticated with DC lobbying and PR, maybe they didn't fully grasp the human element or how things looked outside the Amazon bubble.
Exactly. There's a quote from a senior public policy employee reflecting on Amazon's early, often clumsy attempts to navigate Washington, D.C. politics. They said Amazon's approach was basically, it was DC 101. They treated relationships like transactions, not understanding the need for trust and, well, maybe some basic empathy. They had to learn the hard way.
Let's circle back to the impact on competitors. The book really emphasizes that initial tax advantage again later on.
Yes, it revisits how crucial that was in hollowing out traditional retail. Not collecting sales tax for years effectively gave Amazon that 7-9% price cut automatically.
And retailers like Sears just couldn't compete with that.
They tried, but it killed their margins. Mattioli gives the example of Sears having to match an Amazon price on a $500 TV. To offset the tax Amazon wasn't charging, Sears had to drop their price to maybe $468, selling it at a loss just to stay in the game.
Unsustainable.
Completely. It fueled the retail apocalypse, contributing significantly to Sears' bankruptcy in 2018 and the struggles of many others.
But eventually Amazon did have to start collecting sales tax everywhere, right? Around 2011.
Yes, the legal landscape finally caught up. But Amazon just pivoted its strategy. They went from avoiding taxes to actively demanding tax breaks and subsidies from the government.
How did that work?
They started building their massive network of warehouses and fulfillment centers, and they basically told cities and states, if you want the jobs and investment, give us tax abatements, infrastructure improvements, subsidies.
And communities paid up.
Massively. The book cites figures showing U.S. communities awarded Amazon over $6.3 billion in these kinds of economic development incentives. So they just replaced one form of subsidy, the tax avoidance, with another, direct government handouts. Still an uneven playing field for competitors.
Okay, fast forward to the pandemic. COVID-19 must have been huge for Amazon.
A bonanza. While Main Street retailers were shut down, Amazon was deemed essential. Competitors like JCPenney, Lord & Taylor filed for bankruptcy. Amazon's sales soared.
And Bezos' wealth
Skyrocketed. His net worth jumped by something like $74 billion in just the first few months of the pandemic. It cemented Amazon's position as the default retailer for millions.
But even then, they had PR problems. The warehouse worker firing.
Right, Chris Smalls. He organized a walkout over COVID safety concerns at a Staten Island warehouse and was promptly fired.
And the internal reaction was bad.
Leaked notes revealed Amazon's general counsel, Dave Zapolsky, suggesting in an S-team meeting that they should publicly attack Smalls, try to make him the face of the unionizing effort, portraying him as not smart or articulate.
Wow, trying to discredit him personally instead of addressing the safety concerns.
It showed a pattern of prioritizing narrative control and suppressing dissent over worker well-being, even during a public health crisis.
This brings us to what Mattioli calls the octopus tactic, using power in one area to gain advantages in another.
Exactly. It's about leveraging their dominance across different business lines. AWS, Fire TV, the marketplace. Using strength in one tentacle to squeeze concessions from partners in another.
Like demanding equity from partners.
Yeah, the book mentions an internal policy where Amazon would sometimes demand warrants the right to buy stock at a set price from companies they partnered with, or even just vendors they used. ChargePoint, the EV charging company, apparently walked away from a deal because Amazon's demands for equity were highly irregular.
Using their size to get a piece of the action from smaller companies.
Seems like it. But the Warner Media negotiation over HBO Max is maybe the clearest example of leveraging different divisions.
How did that play out?
Okay, Warner Media was already a huge customer of AWS, spending millions on cloud computing, totally separate from streaming.
Right.
But when they were negotiating to get the new HBO Max app onto Amazon's Fire TV platform, a crucial distribution channel, Amazon started using the AWS contract as leverage.
They link the two deals.
According to the book, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon pushed for favorable terms on HBO Max distribution and advertising revenue, and eventually demanded that Warner Media commit to spending an additional $100 million on AWS services as part of the overall deal.
So let us distribute your streaming service, but only if you also promise to spend way more money with our separate cloud business.
That's the essence of it. It's using the essentiality of one platform, Fire TV, to extract more value from an unrelated service, AWS. Pure structural leverage, the octopus tactic in action.
Okay, all this is building up. The pressure on Amazon is growing. Chapter 16 details Bezos finally testifying before Congress, right? July 2020.
Yeah, it was a huge moment. He resisted for weeks, but finally appeared, virtually, before the House Antitrust Subcommittee. And the key issue was that persistent question. Does Amazon misuse third-party seller data?
And Representative Jayapal asked him directly.
Point blank. Does Amazon use third-party seller data to benefit its private label business? And Bezos' answer was a major turning point.
He didn't just deny it.
Not flatly, like his lawyers had before. He gave this very careful, lawyerly response. I can't answer that question yes or no. What I can tell you is we have a policy against using seller-specific data to aid our private label business. But I can't guarantee you that that policy has never been violated.
Can't guarantee it's never been violated. That's an admission almost, a huge shift from we don't do that.
Exactly. It cracked the door open. It acknowledged the possibility that the rules were being broken internally. Mattioli compares his evasiveness to another famous monopolist under scrutiny, John D. Rockefeller, testifying back in 1911. Apparently Rockefeller just imitates a clam, claiming he couldn't recall details. Bezos, known for his grasp of detail, suddenly couldn't guarantee compliance with a core policy. It was significant for regulators watching.
And that set the stage for the current regulatory battle covered in Chapter 18, the FTC lawsuit.
Absolutely. The real watershed moment, according to the book, came in 2021. Senator Klobuchar announced Lina Khan would be the new chair of the FTC.
Lina Khan, the author of that critical paper comparing Amazon to Standard Oil.
The very same one. Inside Amazon's policy team, the reaction was apparently summed up as the oh shit moment. They knew the game had changed. The Borkian era of minimal scrutiny was likely over.
How did Amazon react to Khan's appointment?
They went on the offensive, ramped up lobbying even more, launched aggressive PR campaigns, even had Bezos publicly attacking President Biden on Twitter over economic policy. They were trying desperately to stop new antitrust legislation and push back against the FTC.
But the lawsuit came anyway in 2023. What's the core argument from the FTC?
The FTC argues Amazon is now a late-stage monopoly. And critically, they argue this monopoly no longer primarily benefits consumers with low prices, the old Borkian defense. Instead, the FTC claims Amazon now uses its power to raise prices and degrade service, both for sellers and customers.
Raise prices, how? Through what mechanisms?
The lawsuit highlights a couple of key things. First, there's Project Nessie.
Project Nessie. Sounds mysterious.
It was a secret pricing algorithm Amazon used, primarily between 2016 and 2018. It tested how much Amazon could raise prices on certain items before competitors stopped following their price increases.
So finding the ceiling for price hikes.
Essentially. And according to internal documents cited by the FTC, Nessie generated over $1 billion in extra profit for Amazon by systematically identifying and implementing these higher prices. The FTC called it a kind of price-fixing cartel, where Amazon set the tempo.
And they considered turning it back on.
Yeah, there's an internal email from 2022 mentioned in the book where an executive suggests reactivating our old friend Nessie, perhaps with some new targeting logic, suggests it was seen as an effective tool for boosting margins. Okay, so that's one mechanism. What's the other big FTC allegation, the price parity thing?
This one is maybe even more fundamental. It challenges the whole Amazon has low prices narrative. The FTC claims Amazon effectively forces sellers to give Amazon their lowest price.
How?
Yeah.
Is that an official rule?
Not explicitly anymore. They got rid of the formal price parity clause. But the FTC argues Amazon unofficially enforces it. If a seller lists an item cheaper on their own website or on Walmart.com, Amazon might punish them by burying their product deep in search results on Amazon, making it invisible.
So sellers are effectively forced to price match up to the Amazon price.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Selling on Amazon is expensive for sellers because of all the fees, referral fees, fulfillment fees, advertising fees. By 2023, Amazon was taking nearly 45% of every dollar a seller made, on average. So sellers have to price higher on Amazon to cover those fees.
Right. But because they can't list lower prices elsewhere without being punished by Amazon, that high Amazon price effectively becomes the price floor everywhere on Walmart, Target, the seller's own site.
Whoa. So Amazon's high fees are actually driving up prices for consumers across the entire internet.
That's the core of the FTC's argument. Amazon's dominance and fee structure are creating inflation, not low prices. Amazon, of course, denies this. Their general counsel, Sapolsky, framed it defensively. The FTC takes issue with us refusing to show prices that are higher than what our biggest competitors are showing. We'd rather lose an individual sale than a customer because a customer loses trust in the way we price.
Basically saying they're just ensuring customers don't see higher prices on Amazon than elsewhere.
Right. But the FTC flips that, saying Amazon's own platform costs are the reason prices are high everywhere else in the first place. It turns the customer obsession defense on its head. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so the Everything War paints this incredibly detailed picture of how Amazon built its empire. It really boils down to a couple of key forces, doesn't it?
Yeah, Mattioli's argument seems to center on two things. First, that permissive antitrust environment, the whole Borkian consumer welfare standard, which gave them decades of room to grow without much interference. And second, Wall Street's unique willingness to fund them, to reward that relentless expansion over short-term profits. That subsidy was crucial.
And the result is this incredibly complex company where all the parts reinforce each other.
Exactly. AWS funds retail, the marketplace feeds private label data, the devices create lock-in. It gives them immense leverage over anyone they deal with. And that famous customer obsession, the book argues it often came at a steep cost to employees and especially third-party sellers.
Right. So let's recap the main takeaways for everyone listening. What are the key points from the book?
Okay, first big one. Amazon's early growth wasn't just smart strategy. It was fundamentally subsidized by the tax advantage initially, and then by investors who completely ignored normal financial rules.
Got it. Subsidized growth. What else?
Second, those octopus tactics. They got really good at using dominance in one area like AWS Cloud or the Fire TV platform to force better terms, demand equity, or extract more money from partners in totally different industries, like we saw with Warner Media.
Okay. Leverage across divisions. Third.
The internal culture. The intense pressure from things like stack ranking and aggressive growth targets seems to have directly led to documented cases of what looks like corporate espionage against potential partners, UB, bonobos, and the systemic misuse of seller data for private brands, like the Fordham Organizer case showed. The internal rules often didn't hold up against the pressure to win.
Right. Internal pressure leading to external misconduct. And finally,
the current antitrust fight. The focus now, with Lina Khan at the FTC, isn't just about low prices anymore. It's about Amazon as a late-stage monopoly that allegedly uses its power through high fees, price parity enforcement, maybe even algorithms like Project Nessie, to actually raise prices and stifle competition across the board, hurting both consumers and sellers. The game has changed.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share it together. We're co-creating the world of tomorrow.